Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.
What's going on in great power terms is, think of China moving vertically south towards the Indian Ocean, and India moving horizontally east and west along the Indian Ocean. China is building or developing state-of-the-art harbor facilities in Gwadar in Pakistan, in southwestern Baluchistan, near to the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz, in Chittagong, in the eastern part of Bangladesh, in Kayuk Fru in Burma, off the natural gas fields of the Bay of Bengal, and in Hambantota at the southern extremity of Sri Lanka. China does not seem this is a controversial topic about what China intends with these ports. It doesn't seem at this point that China wants full-fledged naval bases there. That would be too provocative to India, and China is at pains to make people feel that its rise is benevolent and non-hegemonic. I think what China envisions, or at least at this stage, is warehousing throughput facilities for commercial goods that will, in all of these ports, that are destined for the Middle East and East Africa. At the same time, China is building bunkering facilities where its warships and merchant marine ships can be stored up with fuel, can get repaired, etc. It's unclear what the Chinese intend. If anyone tells you this is Chinese grand strategy, don't believe them. Because the Chinese themselves may not know what their grand strategy is. Because the Chinese, though it's an authoritarian government, in the end, still has a whole wealth of think tanks, of area experts, of various factions of the party that argue and debate with each other in academic journals and otherwise. So China is feeling its way towards the Indian Ocean with and all of these ports and harbor facilities that it's building are all in countries where China is also providing significant military and economic aid. So, with the combination of strong diplomatic and military representation and the building of these ports, it's clear that China will be able to use these ports, which will be the 21st century equivalent of 19th century British coaling stations, which all along the route that Chinese ships have to sail to bring the hydrocarbons from the greater Middle East to the cities of coastal China. China, whose territory was ravaged by the West, by Japan, by Tsarist Russia in the 19th century and early 20th century, where China was split up into 10 parts, actually. China, with this history, with this nervousness about sovereignty and territoriality, China does not want to leave it up to the United States of America to guard the sea lines of communication forever. At some point, it envisions a blue water navy that will be able to guard the sea lines of communication for itself. Meanwhile, while China is pushing south, and let me just go back. Why is China pushing south? Why does it want to have all this presence on the Indian Ocean? Because China faces a Malacca dilemma. That is, too much of its hydrocarbons are dependent on the narrow, shoal-ridden, at sometimes pirate-infested Strait of Malacca. It wants alternative ways of getting energy to coastal China. It's building pipelines across Central Asia, natural gas, oil pipelines through Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, to bring some of this Middle Eastern energy direct overland into Western China. And it's also it also wants to use these Indian Ocean ports eventually to transport natural gas and oil through pipelines across Burma, perhaps in the distant future through Pakistan, directly into western and southern China, so as to avoid the Strait of Malacca. India pushing east and west. In today's India, among foreign policy intellectuals, an historical figure has come back into prominence. That is Lord George Nathaniel Curzon. Curzon was the Viceroy of India, the British Viceroy of India, from 1899 to 1905. And Curzon is revered by today's Indian policy elites, even though he was a British imperialist, because he looked out at the world from the same geographical perspective as today's Indian leaders. And Curzon's India was a greater India. It included today's Pakistan, Burma, and Bangladesh as well. And in Curzon's India required shadow zones of influence in the Middle East, particularly in Iran, in Arabia, in Central Asia, and in Southeast Asia up to the Gulf of Siam, all along the Indian Ocean littoral. And what's happened is that the Indian sphere of influence and the Chinese sphere of influence are overlapping. India and China do not have a difficult history. There's no long-standing hatred or warfare. There was a war they fought in 1962 in the foothills of the Himalayas. But beyond that, the two countries have had a relatively peaceful past, separated as they were by the high walls of the Himalayas. Buddhism spread from India into China in the early modern centuries. But what has created this Indian-Chinese rivalry, and I use the word rivalry, not conflict, is the shrinkage of distance caused by the advance of military technology. You have now Chinese airfields in Tibet with Chinese fighter jets whose arc of operations include India. You have Indian warships in the South China Sea. You have Chinese warships in the Indian Ocean. There's because of military technology and their churning economies. These two demographic behemoths find that their spheres of influence increasingly overlap. As I say this, keep in mind, while India's growth has de-hyphenated it from Pakistan and hyphenated it with China so that we less and less compare India with Pakistan and more compare India with China, India is still not nearly on the same level of development as China. China adds more paved roads per year than India has in total. Just keep that in mind. Yet India will overtake China in terms of total population, and I think the estimate is the year 2032. The place where you can see Indian-Chinese competition the strongest on the Indian Ocean is in Burma. Think of Burma as pre-World War I Belgium, about to be overrun by the French and the British. What does Burma have? Burma has natural gas, strategic minerals and metals, uranium, timber, hydropower. China is building roads and railroads throughout Burma. It's threatening to turn Burma into a veritable colony, and the Indians cannot stand by and just watch. One Indian leader said to me that you Americans from half a world away can moralistically cry out about Burma's authoritarian, benighted military government. But we Indians right next door do not have the luxury to watch as Burma is turned into a veritable Chinese colony. So democratic, pro-Western India has engaged Burma. It's developed strong links with the Burmese military. While China develops a deep water port in the natural gas fields off the Bay of Bengal and Kayuk through 50 miles north in Sittwe, Indians are doing the same. While China wants pipelines going northeast across Burma into southern China, India wants natural gas pipelines going west through Bangladesh into India.